Good evening, everybody. Aquatic here with the Real Report. First off, I want to give an ecstatic thank you to all of you in the United States, Philippines, Canada, United Kingdom, Australia, and India who have since subscribed my channel just in the last week. I am overwhelmed with the support of getting just shy of 2,000 views and reaching the milestone of 50 subscribers. So if you guys haven't, go ahead and hit that subscribe button with that little notification bell, leave a like, and comment down below to help out. I really appreciate it. Now, guys, I want to hop into the Real Report in just a second. Today's about a recap of just the last month's events, proof that the economy is collapsing. So I've got a big slew of articles to hop through here, so let's get into it. Hourly earnings at the steepest decline in 4 decades, BLS report shows. Each month that passes, consumer sentiment is falling quickly. The U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics reported July 13th, real average hourly earnings actually decreased 3.6%. Seasonally adjusted from June of 2021, that decreased 1%. June saw a minus 41.5% year-over-year change in the index of consumer sentiment. 75% of middle-class households say their income is falling behind the cost of living. In addition to leaving earnings not keeping up with the cost of living, most middle-class households, aka 77%, expect the U.S. to be in a recession by the end of 2022. Experts say it's important to set aside some emergency savings if possible, as well as avoid credit card debt. 75% say their earnings are falling behind the cost of living, and 77% think the U.S. will be in a recession by the end of 2022, this year, ladies and gentlemen. Actions middle-income consumers will take to handle inflation is working longer, cutting back, pausing, saving to their emergency funds, delaying car repairs or maintenance, finding a higher paying job, increasing their credit card use, which we'll get to in a minute, so stick around. Tap retirement savings, cut back, pause retirement savings, cut back student loan debt payments, cut back or pause credit card payments. Some of them, none of those. Down here, we've also got where the middle-income consumers will cut spending to fight inflation, eating out less, delay tech upgrades such as laptops, phones, etc., buy fewer clothes and accessories, or cancel delay travel plans. Also driving less. Obviously, fuel costs have skyrocketed. Groceries also skyrocketed. Naturally, they're going to cut that back too and shop elsewhere. Delay home repairs, renovations, cut subscriptions like Amazon, Netflix, buy more used items at yard sales, and sell things. Hopping on to the next article, the state of the U.S. consumer. AT&T crashes as Americans can't afford to pay their phone bills. You guys probably saw this article, but again, this is a recap of just the big picture that I wanted to really lay out here. Customers are starting to put off paying their phone bills, which resulted in the wireless carrier cutting this year's forecast for free cash flow by $2 billion. Jobless claims rise to the highest level in 8 months. Number of Americans filing for unemployment climbs to the highest since mid-November. Job listings starting to trend lower. Online data is showing companies are putting the brakes on job listings for the 3rd month in a row. Declines in job listings were seen nationwide with, hear this guys, 94% of states seeing a decline in help wanted ads. Deleted listings rose 6.9%, according to LinkUp data released Tuesday. Companies typically decrease hiring to maintain revenues and profitability. After that, layoffs become a risk. And if you're a really sick bastard, I once heard a CEO say it was a profitability push to lay off their most important workers. You're just a number, guys, unfortunately. About 45% of small U.S. businesses are freezing hiring amid soaring inflation and labor costs. This is just from 2 weeks ago. About 45% of small business owners in the United States are freezing the hiring of new workers because of high labor costs and skyrocketing inflation. Plus, you guys have probably seen the new wage increases. Well, wage increases, profits for the company go down, cost of items has to go up. Therefore, wage inflation just supports real inflation. A competing survey came up with similar results, interviewing 4,700 small business owners conducted from late June, and despite 51% of small employers still trying to find workers to fill important posts, but the shift in labor situation this summer has made things difficult. It's too expensive to hire. Hiring freezes vary across industries and state to state. 66% of gym owners, 63% of real estate firms, 38% of restaurants, 58% of transportation companies, and 55% of automakers, and 55% of retailers, all reporting a halt in hiring. Guys, that's every sector. Top 5 states most affected by the hiring slowdown so far is New Jersey, Florida, Texas, Virginia, and California. All the way up to 14% of small businesses say they'll be forced to lay off staff as well. 5 other states on the list are not far behind, with 48% in Pennsylvania, close to 50 in Ohio, 40 in New York, 40 in Massachusetts, 30 in Colorado. Only 26% of small businesses reported a full recovery, hear this, to pre-pandemic revenue levels. Guys, it's been 2 years, while 60% said that their labor costs have increased naturally. Nearly 30% of Gen Z is living permanently with their parents now amid inflation's squeeze. Found that 29% of those surveyed, are those in the Gen Z age range between 18 and 25, are living at home with parents or relatives, describing that as their long-term housing solution as the cost of living across the country soars. June's inflation figures show that the rent index rose just shy of 1% over the month, the largest monthly increase since April of 1986. Again, largest monthly increase since the number we keep seeing come up over and over and over, the 1980s. Of those surveyed, 32% said half their monthly income is going towards rent or mortgage. Guys, civil unrest usually starts to pick up when 40% goes to food, now 32% is going to mortgage. That's not a lot of money left over. Inflation costing Americans nearly $500 extra per month. I'd say that's a conservative number. Average Manhattan rent surges past $5,000 per month. This is an article I've previously covered, but it fits in well with the summary. That the average rent in New York City, regardless of what you think of it, surpassed $5,000 in the month of June, 29% increase year over year. Median rental price of Manhattan studio apartments increased 16.7%, while office towers are still 60% empty. No tenants, yet rents are going to new highs. Record container ship traffic jams as backlog continues to build. A whopping 153 ships are stuck in queues off North American ports, up 66% from just June. Up 66%. In under 60 days. In January and February, the North American congestion previously peaked. There were just 150 container vessels waiting off the coastlines. 2/3 were in Los Angeles and Long Beach. As of Thursday morning, there's 153 just off the East and Gulf Coast ports, whereas the earliest West Coast pileup was centralized. Things turned for the worse, and the tally has rose to 125 in July, to 136 in just a few days, and 140 on July 19th. Here we are a couple weeks later. I imagine that list has only continued to grow. Ship queues have increased by 66% over the past 7 weeks. Shift caused by port labor fears as more layoffs and the costs continue to rise. Here we've got another one for the individuals. Credit card debt jumps the most in 20 years as inflation soars. Credit card balances jumped $46 billion in the second quarter of the year compared with a year ago. Balances are up 13%, which is the largest increase in more than 20 years. Back to the labor market. Labor market cracks as job openings suffer the third biggest plunge on record. You guys probably saw that from just 6 days ago. BLS reporting that the June JOLTS finally cracked as the number of job openings, while still elevated, plunged by a near record 605,000 in June, which is the third biggest drop on record, with only the COVID crash seeing bigger drops. To save time, we're going to keep it moving along, so stay with me. Again, if you guys haven't, go ahead and hit that like button and comment anything down below, observations or commentary on what we've covered so far. Next one, report inflation causes increased demand at nearly half of U.S. food banks. This number is pretty concerning. Out of 200 food banks surveyed across the country in recent months, 45% said they have seen more people in need of services, according to Feeding America, which describes itself as a nationwide hunger relief charity. With food costs rising at their fastest rate in decades, we're seeing many families that were already barely keeping their heads above water are now increasingly and more frequently relying on food pantries. Bott added that the higher gas prices have doubled her organization's fuel costs, squeezing both sides of the emergency food assistance equation. People in need has exploded by 138%. In response, the organization is being forced to ration food. Hear this, guys, being forced to ration food for the first time ever. Director of Angels Community Outreach in New Jersey told Fox News that she had temporarily closed her food pantry for the first time ever because it ran out of food. In Savannah, Georgia, 40% increase in food distributed to the community from June to July. Guys, 40% increase in food distributed in 1 month. Coastal Workers Food Drive usually brings in about 90,000 pounds. This year, because of the trucking problems and logistics, this year it's only brought in 15,000 pounds instead of 90. 15,000. That's it. Hopping into the next one, another supporting article from Timcast. Long lines are back at the food banks as inflation hits 40-year high. Back to that 1980s years. As inflation causes grocery costs and gas prices to soar, many Americans are turning to food banks to help feed their families. But at some point, charities are struggling to meet the latest need as federal programs provide less food and donations. Yet we can still send how many billions a week to overseas? Food lines get depressingly long in the U.S. again as crops fail all over the globe. This is something I've been tracking for 2 years now. They're saying it's happening again. Lines at food banks all across the country are getting extremely long. Talking about the next major economic downturn, food supplies have been getting tighter and tighter. Now insane weather patterns are causing crops to fail throughout the northern hemisphere. This hasn't really hit home with the general population yet. He who panics first wins. If you guys have not been, stock up on food. Please, please, please. Even if you guys just buy a few extra cans a week, put some things on the shelf, put them away, because if you guys aren't experiencing shortages, you should consider yourselves very lucky. If nothing else, the prices are just going to keep going up, so you might as well buy some extra now. If you guys are not familiar, go look up Southern Prepper 1. He does a phenomenal boots on the ground report every day of shortages. People email to him everywhere across the country and even globally. Joe Rogan rips Biden over recession flap. You're effing with definitions. I'll play the clip. Here you go.
People would think that it's trivial because they are talking about this economic downturn, but it's not trivial because we've always used that term recession. And we've always used that term to define whether or not the economic policies that are currently in place and whether or not the management and the government has done a good job of making sure that the economy stays in a good place. They definitely haven't done that. So in order to escape that, that sort of distinction, they're literally changing the definition, which is terrible. And it should be pushed back against in a big way. It should be something that people get angry about. Like, hey, you're with definitions in order to pretend that you're doing a good job.
Yeah.
So if you guys aren't familiar with that, they obviously are disputing the fact that 2 quarters of negative GDP growth indicates a recession, and they're trying to change the definition of what a recession is. Hopping on over to Headline USA, small business risks shutting down in droves amid elevated inflation and energy prices. This is a staggering number. Small Business Network released a survey which found that 47% of small business owners say their businesses are at risk of closing by fall 2022. Again, if you guys have been snoozing these last few minutes, Small Business Network's found 47% of small business owners say their business is at risk of closing by this fall. That's in a couple months, unless economic conditions improve significantly, which I don't believe they will. I wish I could tell you guys that were the case, but I just don't see it. 59% of retailers are at risk, along with 52% in construction, 51% in the automotive sector, and 50% of restaurant owners. Whew. Horrible. Here from Zero Edge, real retail sales shrink for the second straight month in June. Recession imminent, spending fueled by debt as savings run dry. The U.S. personal savings rate is at near 5-year low as pandemic fiscal stimulus savings run dry. Lower spending, lower earnings with lower economic growth while inflation is still running hot will likely leave equities nowhere to go but down. If you guys are trading, I'm pretty sure that this recent market push is a bull trap. U.S. industrial production unexpectedly tumbles in June. Manufacturing output fell 0.5% in June, with decreases for durable and non-durable manufacturing of 0.3% and 0.8% respectively. Wells Fargo misses across the board as rate hikes grind mortgage banking to a halt. June shipments decline. Latest Cass data shows volumes weaken, costs hit new high. Freight shipments fell 4.1% in just June alone. Wholesale inflation is surging too, up 11.3% from just a year ago. Last month's jump in wholesale inflation was led by energy prices, which have soared 54% from just a year previously. They're calling this from Breitbart exclusive ship of fools, as 62% of Biden officials who have handled economic policy have zero years of business experience. I trust them completely. Wall Street Journal, baby formula shortage getting worse? Not better. 9 months after the New York Times first reported the shortages and 3 months after Joe Biden acknowledged he finally learned of it, retail inventory of baby formula dropped to its lowest level in July, from the Wall Street Journal. 30% of products out of stock for the week ending in July 3rd, which the problem has only compounded in the last 30 days. What Biden's touted airlifts of supply from Europe, if you guys recall that, he was going to fly in the supply and save the day. Well, that may have helped take the edge off, but that's all. The amount transported covers less than a single week of U.S. consumption. Kind of like when we burn our strategic petroleum reserve or sell it to the Chinese. A flood of repossessed vehicles poised to hit the used car market. I cover this in my car market bubble has imploded, so go take a look at that video if you want specifics. Despite record prices, California cities ban new gas stations to fight climate change. Utter insanity. Cities in California are banning the construction of new gas stations in an effort to fight climate change, despite record high gas prices and the lack of scientific evidence banning gas in California will have any effect on global temperatures. No duh, Sherlock. And to wrap this up, guys, last one here. Breitbart Business Digest, Biden's economy sees worst first half for stocks since 1872. If you're a history buff like I am, you'll find this very interesting. And the first half of the year was the worst for stocks since 1970. However, for the Dow Jones Industrial Average falling 15.3%, that was the worst since 1962. Chief investment strategist at Bank of America Securities ran the inflation-adjusted numbers in a note for clients this morning. He found that this has been the worst start of the year for the S&P since 1872. That's right, folks, not 1900s. 1872, the year Jesse James, Cole Younger led their gang to rob a bank in Columbia, Kentucky, and ended up shooting a teller who refused to open the vault. The severe downturn lasted from 1873 to 1879, and at 65 months, it is still to this day the longest lasting contraction identified by the National Bureau of Economic Research. For comparison, outlasting the 43-month contraction of the Great Depression of the 1930s. 10 states, scores of railroads, hundreds of banks, and thousands of businesses went bankrupt during the 1870s Great Depression. With that, guys, I'm going to leave the real report there. I just wanted to paint that overall picture. I know it can get lost in the weeds hearing 1 and 2 breadcrumbs every day, so I wanted to sum up a bigger zoomed out overview. If you guys like this content, definitely leave a like, subscribe, comment down below. It really helps me out, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Have a great day.